Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to MLBB Academy, where we've got a brand new hero, Suyu, bringing a fresh dual form mechanic that's going to change the way you play. Plus, we're going to break down the latest adjustments to heroes and items that are shaking up the meta in a huge way. If you're looking to stay ahead of the competition and rank up fast this season, then stick around because we're diving deep into the essentials that you need to know. Let's go! Alright, first up, we've got Suyu, the Mask of the Immortal. Let's break down his skills to see how they work and how you can use them to your advantage. Passive skill. Suyu's passive lets him transform between mortal and immortal forms based on how you use his skills. Hold any skill and he shifts into immortal form. Tap any skills and he goes in mortal form. So what's the difference? In mortal form, you get plus 40 movement speed and your basic attacks are faster. This form is more like an assassin type. Now, when in immortal form, your basic attacks deal increased damage. Right here, we can see a significant difference in damage output between the two forms. But that's not all. While in Immortal state, you also gain a 20% damage reduction, which can increase by 1% for every 20 points of physical attack. However, this bonus is capped at a maximum of 40%. So in Immortal form, not only do your basic attacks hit harder, but you also benefit from 20% damage reduction. If you can max the physical stats, that should give him a total of 40% damage reduction in Immortal form. Crazy, right? That's way beyond Trisla's passive damage reduction. During this form, you're more like a fighter because of your durability. First skill. Suyu's first skill comes in two versions. The top version of the skill is a long blink that deals damage on its path. Upon blinking, Suyu will slash in the opposite direction to deal damage once more. The hold version is a charging skill that will stun enemies at the end of the dash. It taps on the first hero it hits, and the charge distance increases as you hold the skill. Second skill. The tap version deals damage in a fan-shaped area. Looks basic, right? Well, not really, because it deals extra damage based on the enemy's 20% missing HP. That means it's perfect for last-hitting low HP targets. The whole version of the skill strikes enemies 3 times on a fan-shaped area. The final strike deals more damage, and there's also an extra heal for Suyu. It's good when you want to sustain in fights. Third skill. Yes, it's called third skill because he doesn't have an ultimate. All his skills are considered normal and they have the same cooldown of 7.5 seconds. Tap it and Suyu will dash backward while dealing damage to its path. Targets will also be slowed by 30% for 1.5 seconds. Hold it and he fires an arrow that increases in range the longer you hold it. Great for long-range poke. Basically, his first skill is for mobility, second skill is for damage, and third is for disengage and poke. You'd want to prioritize upgrading his second skill as this is where most of your damage will come from. Now that you know his skills, let's look at some combos. And the most basic one is this. Hold his first skill to close the gap and stun enemies. Once near, you can unleash the whole version of his second skill to deal damage while they are stunned. If the enemy tries to escape, you can hold your third skill to snipe them from a distance. If the enemy fights back, you can tap the third skill to disengage. The enemies will be slowed, making it hard for them to follow you. When chasing low HP enemies, you can maintain the mortal form for the extra movement speed. Dash to the target with the top version of his first skill, and then follow up with second skill. The extra damage of the skill is a sure way to last hit those enemies. And then you can disengage with his third skill to create space. For wave clear, start with third skill hold, follow up with the first skill tap, and finish with the second skill hold for the cleanup. Remember, there are many combinations with Suyu, and so far I've only shown the basic ones. As for his build, there are 2 versions you can use. This one is more for the assassin type gameplays, focusing on higher damage. If you're the experienced laner type, you can try this one for a more durable version. Before we move on, here are some quick tips to keep in mind. Number 1. Travel in mortal form. The extra 40 movement speed makes you more efficient when moving across the map. Number 2. Quick aim. Be careful with these tap versions. Hold them too long and you'll switch to the hold version by mistake. You'll need a bit of practice because you only have a short time to aim the skill. Number 3. Level 3 power spike. Like Julian, Suyu has no ultimate, so his full combo comes online at level 3. Number 4. He is not a one-shot hero. Burst damage isn't as high as compared to other assassins. Suyu relies more on mobility and sustained damage rather than one-shot kills. Number 5. Damage reduction is not enough. While some may think his damage reduction is high, most of the time it's not enough. You need to combine with defense or HP to make the damage reduction more effective. Number 6. Maximize damage. The top version of first skill hits twice, but if the target is too far, they'll only take one hit. To deal full damage, make sure the skill indicator fully reaches the enemy's position like this. Number 7. Flicker combinations. Surprise your enemies by combining his whole first skill with the Flicker battle spell. The best part? You can bypass frontline enemies and reach the backline in the blink of an eye. Number 8. Extra damage. Don't forget, the top version of his second skill deals bonus damage based on the enemy's missing HP. Use this to finish off low HP enemies or combine it with Retribution to secure the turtle or lord. Team fights. In team fights, Suyu shines as a secondary initiator. Let your roamer engage first, then follow up with extra CC and damage. His first skill has great range, making it easy to reach the backline. Focus on squishy targets for the stun and damage, while your teammates handle the front line. If things don't go as planned, you can safely retreat using the top version of his third skill. Now that we've covered Suyu, let's dive into the major hero adjustments in the latest patch, starting with Zushin. The devs have noticed that while her lane clearing is a bit weak, her crowd control was too strong, so they've rolled up some key adjustments. Starting with her ultimate and first skill, they no longer use mana to cast. However, they've removed the feature where her second skill was mana-free during her ultimate stage. Now here's the game changer. Zushin's second skill no longer consumes mana when hitting minions or jungle creeps. Check this out, when I use the skill on minions, my mana doesn't drop at all. But if I hit an enemy hero, it does consume mana, and it's actually higher than before. Even with items like Lack of Destiny, your mana drains fast when you're up against enemy heroes. So be mindful of how you use your second skill in combat. Her passive also got a tweak. It now stacks up to 20, and each stack grants 4% max mana. This adjustment aims to weaken her crowd control abilities while improving her wave clear at the same time, making her more balanced overall. Hopefully it's enough to free her from the ban section. Next up, let's talk about Chip. The devs are giving him a bit of a trade-off, enhancing his teamfight potential while toning down his map-wide roaming. Here's the big change. His ultimate now immobilizes enemies instead of just slowing them. This is a serious upgrade from his old kit that's going to make him a real threat in those tight teamfights. But it's not all buffs. His special skill cooldown got a big increase, jumping from 20 seconds to 60 seconds. That's huge! Chip won't be able to bounce between lanes as often as before, which makes map control a bit trickier. Honestly, the old 20-second cooldown was insane, so this change should balance him out. Next, we've got Nolan. His first skill and second skills are getting an additional 0.5 seconds of cooldown at all levels, but don't worry, his ultimate is stepping up. It now slows enemies by 30% and gets a 3-second cooldown reduction. So while his mobility takes a hit, his ultimate becomes way more spammable, especially if you stack cooldown reduction stats. Overall, I'm expecting Nolan to become a top pick jungler after this patch. Now let's move on to Terizla. He's been dominating the early and mid game, so to balance things out, they've scaled his passive damage reduction. It starts at 21% now, but grows to 35% at max level. This makes him a bit weaker early on, but much tankier late game. Plus, skill 1 is also nerfed with an additional 2 seconds of cooldown. His second skill also got nerfed with longer cooldowns and lower damage. The only buff he'll get is the stronger damage to minions on the early game. So yeah, expect a weaker Terizla in the early game, but come late game, he becomes tankier because of his new damage reduction. Next, we have Zask. They made some changes to his first skill spawn to weaken his early game power, but this shouldn't be much of a problem once it reaches the late game. And then we have the magic scaling of his ultimate. They increased it by 10%, but the extra magic power was removed. Basically, it's an adjustment to balance his power and make him more manageable as an opponent in the early levels. Next on our list is Hylos. Because of the adjustments to some items, Hylos has shown dominance in ranked games. To balance his power, they had to adjust his base attributes and defense growth. I think they are referring to the items Clock of Destiny and Thunderbelt, which are staple items for Hylos players. This update should weaken him, but not to the point that he becomes unusable. Roger's up next, and his reign of terror is getting dialed back. He is extremely strong in the current meta, and it's evident because he's almost present on every ranked game. To balance, his ultimate cooldown is up by 3 seconds, and his defense boost is reduced. This should give the other marksmen a bit more breathing room in ranked matches. Next is the buff on Orlok. His passive now has a shorter cooldown from 8 down to 7 seconds. And here's the kicker, he no longer has mana. As you can see, there's no more blue bar below his HP. That's right, The only thing limiting his second skill now is his marks. Manage those well and you're unstoppable. Next is the nerf on Julian. His enhanced first skill will now have weaker damage. That's minus 10 to 30 points at different levels. I think this is just fair since he already becomes powerful as early as level 3. Next, we have the nerf on Hayabusa. His ultimate will have a lower attack scaling from 75 down to 60% extra physical attack. But here's an interesting change. The duration of his ultimate at level 1 is now the same as level 2 and 3. Here's an example where we have a level 1 and level 3 ultimate casted simultaneously. As you can see, they both ended at the same time. This should give Hayabusa players more time to move with his second skill after using his ultimate. However, the downside is that the enemy can now predict the exact duration of your ultimate, giving them a chance to fight back. Also, the shorter duration means Wind of Nature can cancel most of his damage. Next is Popol and Koopa. Koopa gets nerfed with a minus 30% extra damage against jungle creeps. And Popol's first skill receives a minus 30 points of base damage. Basically weaker damage for this duo. Matilda is up next and she's getting a smoother playstyle. Her first skill can now be cast without stopping, making her even more efficient when chasing down enemies. Part of the adjustment is the range adjustment on her skills. Her first skill will have a slightly bigger range, allowing her wisp to reach more targets. Meanwhile, the shield range of second skill has become smaller, so she can reach more enemies, but in exchange, the shield range is smaller. This makes it harder to perform those clutch escapes we see so often. Next, we have the nerf on Lolita. Her passive shield now takes 6 seconds instead of 5 to recharge, and her max HP will now affect her shield passive. It means she'll be handing out less shield overall. Next, we have Balmond. The damage increase on each hit from his second skill is now higher from 7.5 to 8.5%, and the maximum damage increase is also improved from 60 to now 68%. He's getting some much needed power to stay relevant in this meta. Next, we have 3 more heroes whose mana are removed. Claude is probably the biggest winner here because now he can use other emblems like Assassin and Marksman. On the old version, he's limited to common emblems because of its mana region. Natalia players will love this update, especially if they're the roamer type. The removed mana is one less thing to worry about. And Grok. Remember when you had to build demon boots for him? With no mana bar, his only limit is cooldowns. Next, we have the adjustments on Sicilian and Alice. Basically, the developers improved their mana stats because of the changes made on Clock of Destiny, which is what we'll discuss next. Clock of Destiny now provides a 10% cooldown reduction. However, in exchange, its mana stat has been reduced from 800 to 400. This change might affect heroes that heavily rely on mana like Alice and Sicilian. But as mentioned earlier, they've already received adjustments to maintain their power levels. For other heroes, the added cooldown reduction is a significant boost to their build. Examples include Gatot Kacha, Edith, and Alice. Wishing Lantern on the other hand now grants 400 mana and an additional 5 points of magic power. By combining these two items, you essentially regain the old version of Clock of Destiny. Sicilian, Zushin, and Alice will enjoy using these two items together. Next up is Thunderbelt. The developers mentioned that its damage was too high during the early and mid-game stages. To address this, the true damage scaling has been adjusted, changing from total defense to extra defense. This means it no longer includes the base stats your hero gains from leveling up, but only the defense from items, emblems, and skills. It seems like everyone was using it, which is probably why it got nerfed. That said, it's still a solid choice for heroes with defensive abilities and those who build defense items. Examples include Kufra, Edith, and Gatot Kacha. Next, we have Twilight Armor. The damage trigger threshold has been lowered from 800 to 500, making it easier to activate its unique passive. Additionally, it now provides a fixed 20% reduction on excess damage. Overall, this item is now stronger and more versatile. I highly recommend trying it out, especially if you're a tanky fighter or roamer. Heroes like Beleric, Hylos, and some support heroes will benefit from Twilight Armor to counter enemy burst damage. Lastly, there's Glowing Wand. This item has been very versatile, combining the Life Bane and Scorch effects. To balance things out, the burn damage has been reduced from 1.5% to 1% of the target's max HP. However, the Life Bane effect is still too valuable to ignore, which is why I still recommend this item, especially for utility mages like Valier, Zask, and Aurora. Moving on, let's take a look at the battlefield optimizations. First up, the movement and attack experience for several marksmen has been improved. This includes Mia, Bruno, Yisun Shin, Carrie, Wanwan, Popol, Nathan, Melissa, and Beatrix when using her bayonet weapon. This hero should now move more quickly after basic attacks, making it easier to chase and poke enemies. You'll notice the difference more during the late game, so I recommend giving them a try. Next, we have improved skill indicator ranges. With the new patch, you can now see a clearer line marking the edge of certain hero skills. Here are some examples of the heroes whose skill indicators have been improved. And that wraps up our official server patch recap. Based on the patch, I'm expecting Claude, Arlott, and possibly Alice to rise this season. Utility mages like Aurora and Vexana will remain strong due to the new Clock of Destiny now offering a 10% cooldown reduction. As for some meta picks like Hylos and Terisla, they should still be solid choices, though not as dominant as before. On the downside, expect lower damage output from heroes like Alpha and Sun due to the nerf on Thunderbelt's true damage. So what do you think of this patch adjustment? Who do you think will rise to the new meta this season? If you want more videos like this, be sure to watch out for the launch of the MLBB Academy, where we feature guides for all ML players. As always, stay safe and thank you for watching.